Hello and welcome to the Culty Podcast. I'm your host Iris, and this is another deep dive episode where today we have a special person joining us. This is the new co-host, Swedish. Swedish, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, there's not much to tell. I am Swedish, so I live in Sweden, and I'm an ex-social worker, I guess. Yeah, I am kind of a nerd for behavioral science, and that's how I got into cults.
Nice. Yeah, I'm very into cults, more from the religious aspect of it. So I think that we complement each other in that way. Since it's our first time recording, we thought it would be interesting to cover a Swedish case. However, I'm shit at pronouncing names in general. So would you like to introduce what case we're talking about?
Well, today we have decided to, I suggested that we do this, so I'm sorry for any headaches you've gotten. It's called Knutby, Philadelphia, which Knutby is a small village in Sweden. Philadelphia is the connection to the church. It's called Philadelphia.
So it's a bit of a combination episode. We're talking about the cult aspect of it, but also it's true crime because we're covering a murder. What I gathered from going on the internet and doing research is that on the night of January 10th, this woman goes in. So she goes in, murders, I think it was 2 people, and then later on, she basically immediately confesses.
So the story goes that this young woman that you spoke of, the nanny, she's usually referred to as the nanny. Her real name is Sarah. She comes in to this pastor's house and actually unalives his wife, which is odd because he has a former wife that also was unalived, but by accident. Coincidence? Nah. And she then moves on to the next house and tries to unalive another person. She doesn't succeed. So she fails in that and disappears into the snow. Because this is a winter night, like you said, January. She gets in her car and she drives off. And the story is that she, actually, this nanny, was the nanny to the family of the pastor. She cared for their kids and she lived with the family before. But she was thrown out of this quote-unquote church cult, let's say cult, for being wrong, which is a big thing within this society. And she was outcasted, basically. But she came back, did all of this, and that's kind of what made Sweden see, or the police see, like, what's going on here? There's something really wrong here. Because it didn't take them long to find her, to figure out that she was the one. They came to pick her up, and she was polite, kind, very quiet, very scared, and seemed very, very controlled. So the police were very much, baffled, because this is not a murderer's face. This is not someone with aggression or hatred. This is just a very afraid young woman.
How did the perception change from, it was strange from the beginning, right? She didn't seem like the murderer's type. Do you know how they started figuring out what was going on there?
Yeah, it was through this nanny and questioning, because you're thinking about how the police figured it out, right?
Yeah, how the police.
Yeah, it was through questioning, and they also questioned other people in the village because they all lived in some kind of radius, a few houses together. As they asked around, kind of seemed like, okay, so the church or the congregation that they belonged to seemed to be very important here, because everyone who belonged to it actually lived in the village. Some were a little further outside, but they were not as closely connected to the inner circle, so to call it. And as they were asking around, it came up with this pastor, Helge, who was the husband of the murdered wife, of course. He had premonitions about his former wife before she passed away. And the members of the congregation thought it was so odd that this was to happen again to the same man. how do you lose two wives, kind of. And they started to kind of unravel, like, okay, so there is something else behind this. Plus that the nanny was so very controlled and so very protective. She claimed all the blame herself and said no one else was involved. No one else was to blame, basically, which is kind of odd when you're trying to get away with murder, you know?
Yeah. Like, she wasn't trying to get away with it at all.
No, exactly. She was sort of more protecting someone else. So that's kind of how they realized that this congregation is not a normal one. Because Philadelphia is, well, it's a branch, really, from what we here call a free church. It doesn't belong to like the ordinary church of Protestantism, for example.
Mm-hmm.
They believe in revelations and possessions and premonitions, stuff like that might not be as common in regular Christianity.
Yeah. So what it said on Google was that it was a branch of Pentecostalism.
Yes.
Which would track. I had to Google the English translation because in Dutch it's Pinkstergemeente, but that doesn't tell our viewer base anything.
No, but it's really funny because in Swedish it's Pingstkyrka, so it's quite similar.
Yeah.
I would have understood it though, definitely.
You would, but most other people wouldn't. Yeah, that tracks. Just for context, how religious would you just say that Sweden is in general? Like, is it normal for most people to be a part of a church, or is it not that common? It's
quite odd because Sweden as a country is deemed secular. So the church is separated from the state, but personal beliefs are different, right? I live in what we call the Bible Belt because I can look in any direction from my apartment and see a church of any kind. It doesn't matter what the religion is. It's just there. And you're sort of born into paying taxes to the church for funeral, that kind of arrangement. But it doesn't mean that you are a part of it. It's more so that it's an old system for funeral specifically that lives on within society. And that you have to do that to be able to be buried. Or you will pay, or you won't, but your family will pay a lot of money when the time comes. So it's not very much spoken of. We don't really push our beliefs on others. There are a lot of Christians, of course. That's quite common. We do also have like Old Norse religions, such as Asatru. There are several different branches within that as well. We do have a lot of different religions here, but it's not as prominent as in many other countries because it is a secular country. So the schools don't have they're not allowed really to push any kind of religion upon you, but there are religious schools. It's funny. It's really funny, honestly.
Yeah, I'm guessing that like any religious schools would be more considered private schools.
Yes.
When you send your kid there, you know what you're getting them into.
Exactly. You send them there for a reason, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. We have similar style here.
Yeah. It's not that far apart, our countries, honestly.
No.
We're kind of close, but the cultural differences are usually quite big, even though you're close geographically.
Yeah, I find it interesting how similar, but at the same time, different countries can be. But yeah, I like having that context to it.
It makes sense, definitely. But we're kind of religiously weird, definitely. We are, definitely.
Yeah, but even then, I'm guessing like this, going back to the case, I'm guessing that this church is a major outlier to whatever the normal situation is.
Yeah, because there was a thing, like in the, it was back in the 90s, I believe, that they were disconnected from the actual Philadelphia church and was kind of not considered a part of it because it didn't align with their beliefs anymore. So the actual church kind of pushed it away and said that, no, this is not what we do. So they were basically all on their own, but they are known as Knutby Philadelphia because they had a connection before.
Yeah.
And they were founded back in, I think it was the 1920s actually. So it was a long-standing congregation that kind of died out because people moved. It was a small village. And then this woman all of a sudden appears and starts making it fun to go to church, starts raising events, like getting people together and actually have like a commune. And the membership numbers went up and it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of community. It allured a lot of younger people and her family as well. She brought people with her. And yeah, it was at the same time as they were disconnected from the actual church. So you would know what she would be doing.
Like, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I'm curious if they would like, when being a member of that church, if you know that you were technically like disconnected from the main branch.
I
And
think
if that
they
mattered. Okay.
because everything is very highly registered here with the IRS and such. Just to make it easier, it's not the exact IRS, but similar.
Yeah.
So everything is kind of, if you are a registered member within this church, they would let you know, I believe. They haven't really spoken about it in anything I've seen, but to me, it would not make sense that they didn't know.
I also don't know if it would have mattered, honestly. I'm just something that I was curious about.
Yeah, it's kind of what they say is usually that you're so invested already that it doesn't matter, that humans and nature are very much, well, I put so much time into this, I can't just give up.
Yeah. Plus, they sound like, you just said, they were very big on community and making it fun. And if you're in that community, if you feel that community sense, like you belong to something, why would it matter what the specifics are if you belong to that group?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the behavioral science between it, like within it, is that we have a need to belong biologically. Just within society, within a group, within our friends or family, we have a biological need to do so. And if you have belonged and you feel that warmth, that love bombing, like all of that good stuff that comes with being popular or loved, if that's taken away from you, you kind of strive to get back to it. It's kind of like, and this is what they did, that being right was something good. If you're right within the church, you're right to God, you're right to Jesus. But if you were wrong, everything would disappear. So you'd fight to get back to it. So the outer world doesn't really matter anymore. It's just within this group, the beliefs are so strong that almost, to me, it's like the religion is lost.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore because this is what matters, the core of how you're feeling within this group.
Yeah, that makes sense. As far as I understood, like the nanny, I don't know if I'm messing people up, was the babysitter the one that ended up murdering people, or was she the victim?
She was the murderer. She was. It's still discussed, which is weird because this was, what, 99?
Mm-hmm.
No, not even 99. It's later, 2004. Yes. So if we go through like the whole story from the beginning shortly, like a quick recap. In 93, this woman that I spoke of earlier, this new leader, the Bride of Christ, she moves in and she hires another reverend, Vincent. And there was a huge structural change and the congregation grew. So in 97, the new reverend comes, Helge. He moves in and he is hired as a priest. Well, he was a manager between 2002 and 2004. So the beliefs kind of changed around here this time when he's hired. Him and the Bride of Christ, which I'm not going to say her name because there's been issues with it. They get together and kind of, in some way, they like fluff each other's beliefs of being so great and so amazing. And it's like to a match made in hell, if you will. They're not romantically involved, but it changes and Helge starts making prophecies. And in 99, his wife is found in tough, passed out. Nothing seems to be amiss at the time. She has fallen. She has a head wound. It's okay. A tragic accident, right? And we get to, it was not even a year later that he marries the sister of the bride, her baby sister, Alexandra. He marries this girl, Alexandra, and after a while, they kind of adopt this nanny, this Sarah. She moves in to take care of the kids, help with the children. There is an incident, like maybe a year or two in, where the police has not been called. They solved it themselves, so to speak, where Sarah has hit Alexandra with a hammer to the head. But she misses or trips or doesn't hit as hard as she's supposed to, so nothing really happens. She gets a wound, but she's fine. And they kind of blame it on a lapse of madness or, a blip in the sanity, I guess. However that happens. And nothing happens. It's fine. They sort it out themselves, I suppose. Then a couple of years more go by, so we're in 2004, and Sarah is considered wrong by the Bride of Christ. She is outcast, basically, and in the end, it's said that the Bride of Christ actually told her, the nanny, herself, that, no, you need to leave. You need to just leave this place. And she does. During this time, the nanny gets text messages that she believes is from God, which is an absolutely odd sentence to say out loud, but that's what happened. And she's getting like commands, basically. You need to do this to become right with God, to become right with me. You need to behave this way or do this act. And she does. She is so heavenly into this that she believes this is true. She believes that this is actually God speaking to her through text messages. She goes out to collect a gun. She fails at first because she doesn't know how to do it. Sweden has very highly regulated gun laws, so it's very hard to get if you don't know the right people or what we might consider the wrong people. So she kind of just wanders around in the capital. She loses all the money because this guy screws her over. She does it again and finally gets one. And then she travels out on January the 10th and goes into her old house, basically, and shoots Alexandra in her bed while the pastor is sleeping downstairs, which is also very odd. How would he not hear her? Moves on to the next house, tries to kill another person, but doesn't, and then drives off, as I said. And within all of this, before she left the village, she had a physical relationship with the pastor, and he had been ill and claimed that she needed to be by his side at all times. So they were basically stuck in a room for months where she just cared for him because he had some kind of sickness. And he is, in my head, he is filling her head with nonsense, beliefs that are not true, that are just to benefit him, basically. And yeah, that's the whole kind of timeline. There's a lot happening in between, but that's the case-wise timeline, so to speak.
That's a lot of stuff happening.
There is. But after the case was kind of looked into, they realized that his first wife that passed in the tub, she had some kind of tranquilizer in her blood. How odd. And they realized they looked into this number, texting this nanny, and realized that it was actually Helge, the priest, who had been sending all these messages. It took a while because the technology was not the same. It's 20 years ago, so it's a long time ago, but it was still very much the shock of something happening like this in such a kind of small country, Sweden. We have 10 million people living here. It was a huge case in the news, and it's still going. Like, there's still new evidence being brought forward.
Yeah, because I tried looking into the case, and then I wasn't expecting recent updates on it, and the updates that you do find are not really that well researched in English, but there are like 2024, 2025 updates on it. And I was like, so it's still not done.
So the nanny, she got psychiatric care. She stated that she acted under spiritual manipulation, which I kind of believe. I mean, she still did the deed, but the reenactments she did with the police were completely off, because you can tell how close you are to someone when you're shooting a gun. And she was like standing 10 meters from, maybe not 10, 5 meters from where this person would have been, and saying that that's where she stood. But the autopsy report shows that she was standing right here. So it's very, very weird. But she got psychiatric care, and basically that's inevitable in a case like this, I think. And it's also, there's no set time for it. You have to get well to be able to be let out. And she was let out quite fast, actually, since she had already served time while waiting for the trial. Helge, the reverend, he was found guilty for instigating murder and attempted murder, and he got a life sentence. And in Sweden, it works the way that when you get a life sentence, there is no set date, but after, I think it's 6 years or something, you can apply to get a date, which is weird and kind of soft. I don't know. The Swedish justice system is a different question, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
But it was a very big story, and it made Sweden look at these smaller churches in a different way. But yeah, that's basically what happened. But the church itself, if we're looking at the cult prospect of it, moved very, very quickly. Like, she moves there in 93, this Bride of Christ. In 2004, everything kind of gets wonky. And within all of this, it also appears that a lot of cult members have been abused, manipulated, and forced into doing things that they absolutely wouldn't do under normal circumstances. They were told who to marry. They were told what to do, what kind of job to have. And all of the money would, of course, go to the church, as cults work.
Mm-hmm.
But she never received a punishment for this. She walked away.
I've got opinions.
Yeah, I thought you would.
It happens so much that the leader, the instigator, the inventor of the whole thing gets away so lightly. And it's very frustrating.
It's horrible. And like, there's so many families affected, like the families of the first wife, the families of all these members that don't leave, even though all of this has happened. They still don't see what's going on. They don't want to see behind the veil, kind of. So it's horrible, all of it. But I don't think Sweden had looked at cults or religion in this way before. So the cultural response was kind of not huge. I wouldn't say huge or drastic, but people became more wary, sort of what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah. Well, was it known what specific things changed in the beliefs of the church? Like, when they switched from being Christian to whatever hell the Bride of Christ came up with?
Yeah, it was prevalent in the way that they would advertise it. They weren't like speaking in tongues, stuff like that. But it was more so, for example, the Bride of Christ had an inner circle, and a few of those men at the inner circle was to serve her as Jesus would while she waited for him, which translates to physical services, so to speak. Yeah. And there has been a lot of talk about it, because the congregation members that are now kind of, well, they're better off, they're out of it, they're clear-headed, have spoken about it and said, yes, this was going on, this happened, while the Bride of Christ has just like, no, I would never. And there is no proof.
Of course she would deny.
Yeah. And it's unusual to have a woman. And I think that the way that Helge, because this is kind of like, it's two different tracks that's going on at the same time within the same tiny village. And one is religious and culty, and one is just pure criminal, basically. The other one has a little bit of crime too, but not as bad, I guess.
Yeah.
It's very odd, but they do meet like from time to time within this, because it is said, I'm going to quote it as it is said, and I believe that there was a ceremony where the Bride of Christ actually married Christ, because the members of the cult suddenly realized that she was wearing a ring. She wasn't married, but she was wearing a ring, waiting for Jesus to return to her, basically. So there's been bits and pieces. It's very odd. And the belief system was probably, that's the main thing that changes, is that normally Christianity sees, or Protestantism, I should say, sees the bride of Christ is mentioned in the Bible, but it's seen as all humans, that we as a people are the bride, that it is us he loves. But they changed it or cheated into it being a person, and it was her. So that's kind of the core, like the main thing that changed so much.
Yeah, so she calls herself the bride of Christ. So I'm guessing she was the main one to have the control within a group. And then you have the priest. I'm wondering how much, like, he obviously had control over the babysitter. Is it known how much control he had? Like, was he one of the main people to have control about everyone? Or was it just with this babysitter?
The way I see it, or how it's explained by the ex-members, is often that Helge the priest would kind of feed into the bride of Christ's narrative for his own gain, because then she would give him more power, basically. So if he was to tell the congregation something during sermon or whatever, she would enforce that this is right, this is correct, and the congregation would have to obey him, basically. But the money aspect, or things, she loved gifts, for example, was usually towards her. He had more of the psychological, religious bit.
Wild.
It is wild. I mean, how often do you get a text message from God? I've never had one.
Me neither. I'd like one. I'd also like to know if I would believe it. It's very easy for us to say 2020 vision and all. Like, I would never believe that.
Yeah, it is. And it's so different, you know, when you're in something like that. Even trying to imagine how a person thinks is impossible. We're not there, so we can't see it. And hopefully we never will be.
Hopefully.
You never know, you know. It could happen.
You never know.
That's
But
kind of the
please
thing.
no.
Usually it's commonly believed that only like challenged people or someone with hardship those are the only ones joining a cult. But it is actually the other way around. You usually have a higher IQ, usually well educated. You're simply looking for something more in life. And maybe this could be it, you know?
Yeah, and like, I believe that every person, like, everyone has their vulnerabilities, and cults are exceptionally well at figuring out what those are and marketing themselves as the solution to that problem. So it doesn't matter how highly educated you are or how not highly educated you are. If you are going through something, cults will figure out what it is and will figure out how to fix it for you. And in doing so, make you dependent on them.
Exactly. It's the vulnerability, not the intelligence. Yeah. It's where you are. You could have just gone through a divorce. You could have lost someone you loved. Bigger life changes that makes you question kind of, where am I going? What am I doing? Is this right? Does life has to be this way? Or is there anything else? Someone looking for answers and in a vulnerable state, basically.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. We had a Swedish artist named Ted Gärdestad who was in the Bhagwan cult, for example. He was very, very vulnerable. But, I mean, he was making bank. He had a lot of friends. He had a great family. He had a child. Everything was there for him. But he was in a vulnerable state himself, where it was easier for him to escape to America and do yoga. You know, that's not what they did, but, you know, it's just that state of mind is very easy to prey on. It's very easy to take advantage of. It's almost like being in an abusive relationship, basically. It's kind of you and the cult.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
That really seems to be what happened with this case with
the nanny.
The nanny. Like,
yeah,
because
definitely.
I don't know the ins and outs of this case, but in my opinion, if she wasn't in as vulnerable of a situation, but also if the priest and the bride of Christ wouldn't have played into those identities as much. I believe she probably would have never murdered in her life.
No, I think the same thing. And there are like interviews with her now. She seems like a very sensible person, but very much reliant on what others think and perceive her as, kind of. I don't want to use the phrase pick me, but I guess that's the modern version of it. But it's a very fragile state where you kind of mold your own personality to fit in.
Yeah.
And it can become very, very dangerous, obviously. I mean, she got done for murder because she did commit one, but that's the worst case scenario, hopefully. But it's also like, it's very common to have this within periods of your life where you are uncertain of yourself. You don't really know who you are, so you make yourself someone else that is liked, that is loved.
Very, very people pleaser.
Exactly, extreme version. Yeah.
Yeah. Extreme. Yeah, very that.
Shoot someone? Fine. Yes, I will do that. This is from God, you see. No, it's a horrible joke, but it's kind of the only way to wrap your own head around it. Like, how does one compute like getting a text message to actually going and getting a gun? Well, it's years and years of manipulation. This poor woman has been through hell and back, and now she has been promised a way to be let back in and back into the grace of God, basically, which is the only one. She had religion before joining. She had always had a religious belief, and this was just the way things worked, basically. So her thinking that she was going to be warmly embraced when coming back, the real world, the police, jail time, all of that, it didn't really exist in her world. Yeah. So
I kind of want to know if there's like how the victims get spoken of, because we've been talking a lot about how the nanny is so complicated because she's a victim but she's also the perpetrator. I don't want to talk the whole episode about her because she's not the one that got murdered.
No, exactly. There are people who actually lost their life, lost their mother, their sister, and sadly, it's not spoken of as much. There has been like attempt of interviews with the children, for example, of the second wife, but it's also a very Swedish thing not to pry. We don't like to meddle. And for once, I think that's a good thing. Like, we shouldn't be hunting these kids down. They need their peace and quiet. And the members also knew these people and remembered them fondly, and don't understand why they had to lose their life. Because it's like, no, you can't divorce as a priest. That would be horrible. You can, but not there, I guess. Yeah. And they speak of them highly, all of those who were either hurt or lost their life, and have kind of been remembered within all of this, but absolutely not as much as they should be, because they are the actual victims. But it's the same as everything else. Like, it's a true crime case. We don't care about who lost their life, only that someone did, which is a horrible way of seeing it. But it's kind of human in a way. It's like the car crash you see on the motorway and you slow down and why do I can't stop, but I don't want to see it. It's kind of like that. And whoever has been victimized kind of gets forgotten because of the sensationalizations.
Yeah, in Dutch we have a word for it.
Just a word for everything. It's
ramptoerisme, which is tragedy tourism. The way you slow down at an accident. Ramptoerisme. The way we listen and speak about true crime and what is centered is much less literal case of it, but it's also ramptoerisme.
It's a good word, honestly. I'm jealous. We don't have anything like that.
Yeah, I think you can just ask a Dutch person and they will come up with new word for like basically anything. But yeah, I guess in a lot of situations we the perpetrators and not the victims. And on one hand, I'm like, that's not how it should be. On the other hand, there is like the prying eyes. The families have already been through enough.
Exactly.
Victims have already been through enough. Leave them alone. If they feel the need to speak out about it, give them the platform for it. But also don't hunt them down.
There has been, like, the Bride of Christ, for example, her children. I know at least one of them has written a book, done an interview. There are bits and pieces of it from the children because they're all grown now. They're my age, but there's like a lot of material for it, but it's all very much a puzzle. You kind of had to pick and choose and try to make your whole, because it's all perspective, right? Because what happened, they saw that through kids' eyes. They only know a children's emotion about it. Growing up, all of this was happening in society. Like you said, there's still newspapers printing about it because new evidence. Like, what's going on here?
It will never be a perfect puzzle.
No, it won't. It will be one of those jagged ones you got at a secondhand store, kind of. It's like missing pieces and...
Maybe some pieces from a different puzzle mixed in and stuff.
Exactly. And it's very much, for me, looking at it from a behavioral standpoint, I'm very much interested in what criminals, how did they grow up? What happened? It's usually like, for example, serial killers is a usual pattern you follow, kind of. Sometimes there's one of them who's absolutely nothing like the others and doesn't tick any box, but usually they have like this kind of pattern. It's the same with cults, really. Like, you have the love bombing, you have the outcasting, you have all of these steps that you go through. So it is a behavioral pattern within us humans that we do. Not all of us, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But it's also within this case, since there is true crime within a cult, that ticked all my boxes of interest. Because speaking of the perpetrator, the nanny, who is also a victim, it's not common, but it happens. Like, this kind of persuasion and manipulation. But it happening within a religious theme is way more common than it happening without the religion. So for me, that was kind of, oh, what happened here? Because this girl grew up like any other Swedish girl would. Nothing weird, nothing odd. And it seems like she does have some kind of personality disorder, but it's not released to the public, which tells me, as a personal view, that it's probably got to do with the way she perceives information, that she was so easily manipulated, for example. Or easily, I shouldn't say that, but very... Yeah. It was a big step from doing nothing until shooting someone, Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what got me very much interested, is that there is both the religion, the manipulation, and at the same time you have a completely different story going on at the same time in the same village. But it's just separated, but it meets together all the time, like a flood almost. So my behavioral science was just like, huh? Tell me more.
Yeah, I had the same from the other side. I was like, because people think that cults have to be violent all the time to be a cult. That's not the case. Most of the time, like, yes, there are strategies in a cult to keep their members, isolation, the control of the money, us versus them. But those are all very not physical violent. There doesn't, to be
psychological.
Yeah, it's all but there, to be considered a cult, there doesn't have to be physical violence, and it's actually more rare when it does, or when it ends up in like murder or something. And to me, this case seemed very interesting because we have that aspect of murder, but we also have that aspect of like high control, and the other storyline where I'm like, okay, she obviously did it, but what is the whole storyline between the priest and his wife and his former wife? And like, there's so much more going on.
Yeah, it's a lot in a very concentrated place geographically, and a concentrated timeline. It's so much happening she goes off and married Jesus, I guess. And at the same time, he's doing this ritual while he's at home, manipulating this poor woman and keeping up a marriage and a church at the same time. It's like, what? How? Mm-hmm. How is this going on all at once? Which it is uncommon. As you say, like, the violence within a cult is not the prevalent one, which is what I think why once there is a court case or a police hearing and they start to question people, they realize that the psychological abuse is actually way worse than they could ever have imagined. And also usually very long drawn.
Yeah.
It's been going on for a long, long time for people not to leave once the crime actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, yeah, definitely.
I know this saying in Dutch, or this storyline in Dutch, so I don't know how well it translates, but it's like I think in English it's not frogs, but when you boil frogs, you turn up the heat more and more and more and more, and they don't realize they're being boiled alive. I think
it is frogs in English. It is. Yeah, the boiled frog. Yeah, it is.
Okay, so yeah, that's so much the case in situations like this, because especially if it's not shown from the start, people inside the community don't realize until very late what is going on.
Yeah, it takes a little longer.
If they even realize.
And it's also like, it's not only the psychological aspect of it, but the religious one is once something bad happens, that kind of borders between being legal and not. I mean, it's probably illegal, but in their minds it could be normalized because, well, it's God's will, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have an outer thing coming in on the psychological manipulation, adding strength to it, kind of saying it's okay, it's fine, because this is what God wants, for example. And it creates like a completely different dynamic, or even like a more strong way of being able to control someone, because a religious belief is usually very deep rooted and you don't abandon it easily.
Yeah, and in a lot of the cases, the religious aspect also helps keep people in even more, because the religious laws are above the laws of the location, the laws of the country in most people's heads. They can start to question, like, is this still illegal, or is this still legal, or what's going on here? But if the religious leader then says, God has told me that this is what he wants, and you have that religious, okay, we're still doing great, that is above whatever the political system says, because it's going from God.
Yeah, exactly.
So whatever then is technically illegal doesn't really matter anymore, because God has given the okay.
Yeah, he's on our side. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, where it is like that. And it's also a gradual, it's the same with the frog. Because at first you kind of, well, we'll register as a church because we don't want to pay taxes, for example, if it's in America. It kind of borders on like what could benefit us as a community, as a belief system. What can we do? And then if you look at like all cults, basically, they start to tremble like at the line of the law. And then all of a sudden someone puts a foot outside, but the religious leader is like, no, it's fine because God told us it was correct. Even if you do question it at that point, these leaders are usually very good at spotting the doubters, and they will catch you and ask you, what are you doing? Why are you not believing enough? You need to pray on it. You pray and pray, nothing happens, you still have these questions. And you ask again, and they're like, okay, well, obviously you're doing it wrong. And you're starting to get frozen out of the group. And it's way easier for someone to say, well, okay, I prayed on it again, and now it worked. Now I get it. Than actually getting it. Just to be let in back into the community. It's far more easy. As a human being, it's so much easier to kind of shift your mind a little bit to be accepted and loved.
Yeah.
So it is really interesting. And that's, as you know, these very, I don't want to say normal, but the regular steps of a cult, basically, before they crash and burn, are just these like controlling little attributes of how to keep people in line, kind of, and to make sure that they also realize that this is fine.
did we miss anything important, or like have we discussed everything?
Well, it could be good to know that after this big shift that happened, there was very much a belief in prophecies, and like within their daily life, you had a prophetic, a guidance. That the members were very much encouraged to seek the spiritual confirmation for major life decisions. And the leaders themselves would direct marriages, relationships, and would okay if you were interested in someone else or not okay it. And they had like this very prevalent influence in everyone's life. You would bring up every decision, like which school am I going to, stuff like that, with your leaders. And same with jobs, like where do I work? You could have your dream job in front of you and they would tell you, no, you're gonna sell hot dogs over here, you see. And you would probably. So it could be good to know that this was the kind of control that was going on. It was not just your daily, what do I wear? It's not that kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's, there's a lot to it. And if you want to find it, it is there, but it is hard to find in English. There is an HBO series, I believe. It's called Pray, Obey, Kill.
Yeah.
It is not completely factual, I believe. There is some spins. But that's always the case kind of with these kind of cases where it's one person's word against another. So it's going to happen, you know. And I would give it a watch to get a better understanding of the whole picture, because there is so much going on, honestly. But yeah, definitely. Did you feel like you got a better understanding of it, I guess?
Yeah. It's definitely like there's still a lot of chaos going on, but because it's such a complicated case. But yeah, I feel like I've got a better understanding. Most of the time at the end of the episode, I will like say if the group, in my opinion, is a cult or not. I think through this conversation, you have managed to gather that I definitely think this is a cult. So let's get that over with.
I will agree, people. Don't join it.
Just pass this one by. There are other groups. But yeah, I think I've got a better understanding. And thank you for discussing it with me. It's very enjoyable.
Yeah, I do have a lot of fun doing these things. This is the kind of factual things that my brain keeps retaining for some reason.
Hi, thank you for still being here. Culty Audio here with some post-episode talking points, I guess. During this audio-only part of the episode, there will be 2 pictures on screen. Those are the images of the 2 victims in this case. As we've discussed during the episode, the victims don't get remembered that much. And I want you to at least remember their faces and not the faces of the perpetrators. Their names are on screen too, and please be respectful to them and their families. Okay, so that out of the way. This was the first episode that I recorded with Swedish. I immensely enjoyed the process, but there are some things we might need to tweak. And for future episodes, you might see some changes you might not even notice. We will be figuring it out together. I'm not promising the amount of episodes we will be making because it all depends on how well it goes. But there will at least be one other episode with Swedish on. Next episode will be a Friday with Friends. And yeah. Oh, if you liked the episode as much as Swedish and I enjoyed making the episode, please like and comment. And there's a new thing where you can hype a video if it's in the first week of publishing. And maybe subscribe. Don't accidentally join a cult unless it's mine. See you next time. Bye!